Not all legendaries are created equal. I'm going to talk about potential buffs to the weaker ones and get right into things. Moltres has the second highest base stat total out of all the fire flying types, but has managed to be the worst out of all of them except Oricorio. We could give it the same tools that Charizard or Talonflame used to be successful, but they both have abilities which are very restricted in their distribution, and giving them to a legendary feels like too much. Instead, I want to give Moltres no guard, allowing it to bypass the usual unreliability of Hurricane even when the sun is up. The only Pokemon which have had a reliable flying stab in the sun are Lugia with Aeroblast and Yveltal with Oblivion Wing, neither of which are able to deal high damage in the sun as a fire type. Having sun boosted stab and not losing strong flying stab as a special attacker is a niche no Pokemon since G-Max Charizard has really had the opportunity to do. Giving it to Moltres isn't the strongest option available, but it does give it a potential niche. When talking about buffing these Pokemon, the easy solution is to buff their stats or just give them a terrain or weather setting ability, as that automatically guarantees them a spot on some team. And for that reason, I'm going to be banning flat stat increases and terrain and weather setting abilities, as well as obviously strong abilities like Huge Power or Shadow Tag. Stat optimizations are allowed, but I'm going to avoid giving anything the Mega Beedrill treatment. The goal of this isn't to make the most busted Pokemon imaginable. We already have enough of those. But I want to put it in enough work to get these Pokemon out of the trenches and allow them to maybe win a tournament if the meta shifts in their favor. Compared to its siblings, Raichu is a pretty big disappointment. Entei takes full advantage of blocking Intimidates and flinches with Inner Focus, as well as having access to Sacred Fire. And Suicune uses Inner Focus to be a reliable, bulky Tailwind setter that has an Ice Resist, which is pretty rare as far as Tailwind setters go. Raichu offers good but not great electric damage and a great move pool with moves like Scald, Aurasphere, and Shadow Ball, but that's really about it. To fix this, it needs to be a little bit faster, hit a little bit harder, and have a better ability. Let's take 20 points away from its attack stat, putting 10 into special attack and 10 into speed. Let's also replace Pressure with Mold Breaker so that it can get through all the electric and water immunity abilities, and now you have a strong, fast electric type with great coverage that can't be stopped as easily as it could before. If that isn't enough, give it Thunderclap, which is available only to its past Paradox form Raging Bolt, which because of its ability can't be stopped by Armor Tail. With all these tools, Raichu becomes a slightly weaker Raging Bolt, which can easily fit onto teams as a fast, reliable Thunderbolt spammer. If you're enjoying the video so far, you should go ahead and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out a lot, and you'll get more quality Pokemon content just like this. One easy change to make with Regice is to make the Snow Defense Boost affect the damaged Body Press, because currently it does not. Even then, that's not going to make it an incredible Pokemon or anything, so let's give it some more juice. Take 20 points out of its speed, slap it onto special attack, and boom, stronger Trick Room Articuno, which just won a tournament earlier in Scarlet and Violet. Buff Ice Body as well to restore 1/12 of its HP every turn while Snow is active, and now it's ridiculously difficult to remove as long as you keep the Snow up.
Rock and stone, brother!
Regirock is a little bit of a different story. There are two signature moves staring Regirock in the face that will be a very big improvement to it. Diamond Storm will allow it great spread damage and the ability to make itself bulkier at the same time. Salt Cure would allow it to threaten steel and water types with intense damage over time. I don't love doing this, but I'm gonna give it Diamond Storm. Garganacl is probably a better user of Salt Cure anyway, and I don't feel super bad encroaching on the signature move of a Mythical. Diamond Storm gives Regirock reliably strong spread damage and has a 50% chance to double its defense, making Body Press very strong very quickly. This is a little bit stronger than the level of changes I want to make in this video. And I also didn't want to pass Bust's signature moves onto just every Pokemon here and call it a day. But I couldn't think of any other good buffs to give Regirock outside of this or Sandstream. So if you have any ideas, let me know in the comments. Mesprit, Uxie, and Azelf have never been viable despite being available since Generation 4. They're simply outclassed by Cresselia, who has the same typing, ability, access to Lunar Blessing, and actual tournament usage. Azelf doesn't exactly fit the same role as Crest because it is more offensive, but a pure Psychic type that can't even properly use Psychic Terrain because of Levitate keeping it off the ground has no place trying to compete with Pokemon like Armarouge or Iron Crown despite being significantly faster. The inability to use Psychic Terrain actually holds all three of these Pokemon back. But luckily that means that the first step to buffing these Pokemon is obvious. Replace Levitate with something more viable. For Azelf, I would replace Levitate with Justified, and give it the additional fighting typing to go along with it being the willpower Pokemon. Fighting coverage is very good on Psychic types as it helps them deal with Dark and Steel types that ordinarily give them so much trouble. Azelf's physical attack is just as strong as its special attack, so we don't even need to change any of its stats around to allow it to take advantage of Stab Drain Punch. This doesn't make Azelf incredible, but it does give it some type of niche as there aren't that many psychic fighting types in the game. For Mesprit, I'm going to give it an ability that might be considered against my own rules. Simple doubles all stat changes and is only given to bad Pokemon like Swoobat, Bibarel, and Numel. The reason I'm okay giving this thing simple is because that's all I'm going to give it. Originally, I was going to adjust its stats and switch attack with speed to let it outspeed Urshifu and add Fairy to its typing, but with its signature move Mystical Power granting it a +2 special attack boost and dealing damage when it has simple, I thought giving it anything else might be too much. Uxie is the only Lake Trio Pokemon I'm going to adjust the stats of. I'm going to switch HP and speed. Making a Pokemon slower usually makes them worse, but stay with me. In addition to this increase in bulk, I would also give it access to Follow Me. Both of these changes together give it some advantage over Indeedee or Cresselia, which would be its main competition as a supportive psychic type. It will be slower and bulkier than Indeedee, and it would offer redirection that Cresselia cannot. It doesn't get the terrain setting of Indeedee or the healing Cresselia, so it won't replace them all the time, but this unique combination of traits gives you a small reason to pick it over one of the two, and would allow it to pop up as a niche option more often. Moving up to Gen 5, we're going to be buffing Cobalion, Virizion, and Terrakion. First, we'll be making a change to Justified, which makes it block Intimidate like Scrappy and Inner Focus. This would retroactively apply to Azelf as well. These Pokemon are primarily physical attackers, so removing the biggest obstacle to physical attackers, especially when it fits them thematically, is a worthwhile change. For individual changes, let's start with Terrakion, because it needs the least amount of work. I would give it access to Mighty Cleave, the signature move of its Paradox form, Iron Boulder. An Intimidate immune Pokemon with 100% accurate Rock Stab that can bypass Protect is certainly a unique offering, and I'm sure it will find use on some sand teams out there. Cobalion and Virizion both have the issue of their special attack being too high when the Pokemon doesn't really want to use it that much. To fix this, we'll take 20 points away from their special attack, putting 15 points into their attack stat and the remaining 5 into their weaker defense stat. If that's not enough, you can instead put those 5 points into speed. None of these changes are going to make them busted, but being immune to Intimidate is something that has greatly helped Inner Focus Pokemon, so doing the same thing for Justified Pokemon is a very good buff for them. And given that knockoff is everywhere, the Justified boost is likely to come up a decent amount of the time. Enamorus is the weaker little sister to the original 3 genies that have each had their time at the top of competitive play. Enamorus isn't even a bad Pokemon, with good typing, great stats, a solid move pool, and access to Contrary in its incarnate form, and Overcoat in its Therian form. The main thing Enamorus did wrong was trying to directly compete with Fluttermane. There's a dark voice in my head telling me to just give it Floor Cannon and call it a day, but like, does it even need a buff? Sure, there isn't really a reason to run over Fluttermane outside of wanting a slow Fairy type for Trick Room with its Therian form, but there's never been a format where it's been available and Fluttermane hasn't been, and we don't know exactly what Champions is going to be like. In a Dynamax format with Max Airstream, this Pokemon could be a more offensive version of Togekiss, who was one of the best Fairy types in Gen 8. As it stands right now, Enamorus meets the criterion of being able to do well if the meta shifts in its favor, but there are 2 changes I will make that more likely to happen. First, Springtide Storm will be changed to be perfectly accurate in the rain. Out of these 4 moves, it's the only one that isn't perfectly accurate in the rain, and that always bugged me. Second, in its incarnate form, it will need a new main ability to run if it doesn't want to run Contrary to lower its stats with either Max Airstream or Max Quake. I could see Hospitality working with its deck entries talking about it bringing life. That's a little strong of a buff, and I don't really want to hand out signature abilities like that, so I think I'll give it Natural Cure instead. Not a great ability, but definitely better than Cute Charm. Wo-Chien honestly isn't as bad as the memes make it out to be. It just looks really bad because 2 out of 3 of its siblings have won Worlds, and the other one dominated the meta back in Reg D for a little while. Despite having a fantastic ability that reduces the attack stat of all Pokemon around it, its kit doesn't really give it the staying power that it needs. It has a terrible typing with 6 weaknesses, one of which is a 4x weakness, and a stat distribution that is poorly allocated for what it wants to be. It has a surprisingly high special attack stat when you consider that it yearns for more HP. Compare its stat to Garganacl and you'll see exactly what a Mon optimized for defensive play looks like. I'm not going to switch out its type. I thought about Poison Dark instead of Grass Dark, as that is stronger defensively, but that is more of a buff than I think this thing needs. And if that happens, it's going to lose Leech Seed, which is probably one of the best moves on it. I will optimize its stats a fair bit, however. Let's cut 30 points from its speed and 20 points from its attack stat. We'll put 15 points into special attack to give it stronger Giga Drain, Snarls, and Pollen Puffs, and the remaining 35 points into HP to make it an actual bulky Mon. On top of this, I would also give it Strength Sap. Now it really hurts physical attackers, and is still one of the only ways to slow down Urshifu. Wo-Chien is actually the most accomplished legendary on this list in recent memory, and probably shouldn't get this much of an adjustment, but I am playing favorites here and sneaking it in because I think he is silly and I want him to win. Munkidori and Fezandipiti are strangely bad for legendary Pokemon released in Scarlet and Violet. For both of these Pokemon, and I guess Okidoki too, I would buff Toxic Chain to make it so that poison type moves can both hit and poison steel types. Both of these Pokemon match up horrendously into steel types, and this would help them quite a bit. And poisoning some of these bulky steel types like Zamazenta that love to stick around is a pretty good niche to have. I would also optimize Fezandipiti stats, switching out its special attack and attack stat. To end out the video, I want to talk about 4 restricted Pokemon. For the restricted Pokemon, I'm going to break my earlier rules and give them some of the stronger abilities and moves I've been shying away from, because with how strong the best restricted Pokemon are, they need so much help to be viable. Lugia is getting a special defense Psychic Body Press. With its high special defense and the ease at which it sets up Calm Mind, this would hit pretty hard into any Pokemon that aren't Dark type. If that isn't enough, make it a Psychic Water type instead of a Psychic Flying type for better defensive typing, ability to take advantage of Psychic terrains, and a means to reliably handle Incineroar and Steel types if you change Aeroblast to Hydroblast and go along with the type change. Okay, I'm super buffing Zekrom and Reshiram. Reshiram doesn't even technically qualify for the buffs because it has had good results as recently as Gen 8, but I can't buff Zekrom and not Reshiram given the change I want to make. I'm giving Reshiram Special Orichalcum Pulse and Zekrom Physical Hadron Engine. With this change, they both jump up multiple tiers in any restricted format they're legal in, and you have to be considered during team building even if they're not going to be used. And I know this is the biggest change in this video, but honestly, they're not even as strong as Koraidon and Miraidon because those Pokemon are so much faster. But if they're not around, the dragons of the past will get to come out to play. Mewtwo sucks. It does everything worse than both Kali Shadow and Lunala. We're gonna need quite a few changes to give this thing a chance. First, we can make it a fighting type to give it Stab Aura Sphere and better matchups into Dark and Steel types. We'll take 10 points out of attack and slap it onto its speed stat to allow it to outspeed important Pokemon like Miraidon, Koraidon, Fluttermane, and Chien-Pao. Now that it's a fighting type, we've made Mewtwo significantly worse into Fairy types. So to counteract this, we'll make Side Strike super effective into Fairy types. Does this make sense with the lore? No, but it would make Mewtwo much stronger. Now it has much better matchups into 3 of the arguably best Pokemon in the game, with the exception of Speed Booster Flutter sets, which will still be a lot of trouble for it to deal with. And that's it. Thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, I think you'll enjoy a video where I discuss whether or not competitive Pokemon is fair. Also, if you enjoyed the video, I would very much appreciate if you would hype the video, leave a like, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much for watching. Looking future games, and have a good one.